Okay, now we're going to learn how to do something called solving a right triangle. So in your notes on page 70 in your ISN, you're going to write down these notes: solving a right triangle. Okay. If we have a triangle, and this will be example 1. We have a triangle like this. And we have 35 degrees, 35 degrees up there, and then a 10 over here. Your instructions will be to solve the right triangle, and that means you're going to find all the missing sides and angles. So there's not going to be any variables in your picture. This is what your problem will look like, and so you'll have to find everything that's not there. Well, when you look at this, what's the easiest thing to find? You have a 35-degree angle, a 90-degree angle. You can find that angle right there. How many degrees are in a triangle? 180. So if you add 35 and 90 and subtract from 180, what's this angle have to be? 55 degrees. Okay? Because the 35, the 55, and the 90 would make 180. So you've got that part. Well, now we need to find these two sides. So I'm going to call one of them X and call the other one Y. Now you can go about this lots of different ways. You can do Pythagorean theorem, which you can't do Pythagorean theorem yet, but you will be able to. And you can use the trig functions. So let's start with X. I'm trying to find X. I'm going to use the 35 degrees. Now you can use the 55. There's nothing wrong with using 55, but here's the deal. If you use an angle or an answer that you've come up with, let's say I made a mistake on this and called this 65 instead of 55. If I use 65 to find X and this is wrong, then my X is going to be wrong as well. So you just need to make sure that if you're using an answer that you've created or that you've found, you need to make sure that you know it's right. I think it's safer to use what's given. So I'm going to use the 35. So when I look at my picture, the X is adjacent to 35 because it's next to it, and the 10 is opposite. So I have opposite and adjacent, which is tangent. So I'm going to do tangent of 35 equals opposite 10 over adjacent X. And I'm going to solve this equation for X. So on your calculator, you're going to do tangent of 35, which is 0.7002, equals 10 over X. Since my 10 is on top, I'm going to divide. So I'm going to do 10 in the calculator first. 10 divided by 0.7002, and that gives me 14.28. So that, or you can call this 14.3. So that's my X. For my Y, I'm going to use the 35 again. This 10 is still opposite, but now that I'm trying to find Y, the Y is the hypotenuse. So I've got opposite and hypotenuse. So that is O and H, which is sine. So I'm going to do sine of 35 equals opposite 10 over hypotenuse Y. So I'm going to type in sine of 35 and hit enter, and I get 0.5736 equals 10 over Y. And since this 10 is on top, I'm going to divide by that. So type in 10 divided by 0.5736, and you get 17.4 for Y. So now we've found this angle, we've found X, and we found the Y, and that's what you do to solve a right triangle. Now, once you have the X right here, the 14.28, since you have two sides, if you wanted to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared and find Y using Pythagorean theorem, you can do that. Some students think it's easier to use trig for all of it, and some students like to use Pythagorean theorem, so it's completely up to you. Okay, let's do example 2, and I want you guys to try it. Hit pause, and I want you to try this one by yourself, and then we'll work it out together. All right, let's make this angle down here at the bottom be 74 degrees. Let this side be 15. Okay, and your instructions are to solve this right triangle. So you're trying to find everything that you don't know. So go ahead and hit pause and try this by yourself. All right, your first job is to find this angle right here. So if you know this is 90 and that's 74, add those up and subtract from 180, which means this angle has to be 16 degrees. That means you're trying to find x and y for your sides. X is the hypotenuse. 15 is adjacent to 74. So I'm going to do hypotenuse and adjacent. A and H is cosine. So cosine of 74 equals adjacent 15 over x hypotenuse. And I'm going to type cosine of 74 in my calculator, and I get 0.2756 equals 15 over x. Since my 15 is on top, I'm going to divide. So 15 divided by 0.2756, and I get 54.4 for my x. Okay. For y, I'm going to use a 74 again. The 15 is still adjacent. The y is opposite. So I'm going to do tangent, because that's opposite and adjacent. Tangent of 74 equals opposite y over adjacent 15. Type in tangent of 74, and I get 3.4874 equals y over 15. Since my 15 is on the bottom, I'm going to multiply this time. So take the 15 and multiply it by the 3.48, and I get 52.3. So if you did this on your own and you got 16 for the angle, 54.4 for x, and 52.3 for y, then you did it correctly. Okay, I wanted to do number 7 with you because you have some problems like number 7, and I want to make sure that you understand what you're supposed to do. On number 7, you don't have an angle. You don't have angle A or angle B, so you have to find it. So you just pick an angle you want to start with. So let's say we're going to put theta right there in angle A, and we want to find angle A. So we look at 11, see how 11 is opposite theta, and the 13, since it's across from the hypotenuse, or across from the right angle, it's the hypotenuse. So we have O and H, which is sine. So we're trying to find angle A, so I'm going to put sine of A. I'm just going to put A instead of theta to keep track of what I'm trying to find. So sine of A equals opposite 11 over hypotenuse 13. And then to find this, go to your calculator, and you're going to hit second sine, and it's going to come up with the sine to the negative 1, and then you're going to type in this fraction, 11 divided by 13. And when you do that, you get 57, and I'm going to round that to 0.8. So angle A is 57.8 degrees. Okay, so now you've got to find angle B. So you're going to look at the 11 and the 13 again. So I'm going to scratch out the O, because if I'm trying to find angle B, 11 is adjacent to angle B. So I'm going to call that an A now. And the 13 is still the hypotenuse. So I have A and H, which is cosine. So I'm going to do cosine of B equals adjacent 11 over hypotenuse 13. And I'm going to do the same thing. Second cosine, so I get cosine to the negative 1. I'm going to type in that fraction, 11 divided by 13, and I get 32.2. So angle B equals 32.2 degrees. Okay, so there's my two angles. Now to finish solving this right triangle, you have to find side AC. Since you already know 11 and 13, you can do Pythagorean theorem and do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You could solve it that way. If you don't like using Pythagorean theorem, or if you'd rather use trig, then you could use the trig. So I'm going to do it with trig just because that's what this unit is based on. But if you wanted to do Pythagorean theorem, there's nothing wrong with that. So if I do the trig, I'm just going to pick an angle. You can pick angle A or angle B. It doesn't matter. So I'm just going to pick angle A, the 57.8. So this is 57.8 degrees. And I'm trying to find AC, so I'm going to put an X right there. And I'm going to use the 11. You could use a 13. It really doesn't matter. There's so many different ways you could get this answer. We just all need to match for X at the end, but there's lots of different ways you could do it. So I'm going to pick the 11. The 11 is opposite, and the X is adjacent. So opposite and adjacent means I'm doing tangent. So I'm going to do tangent of 57.8 equals opposite 11 over adjacent X. So this time, since I have the angle, I'm going to hit the regular tangent button. So I'm going to hit my tangent of 57.8. And I'm going to round this to 4 decimal places. The 9, there's a 7 behind it, so everything could round up. So we're just going to call this 1.58. And since it's 797, I'm just going to round that up to 80. So I've got 1.58, and then I took the 797 and rounded up to 80. If we kept it 79, our answers wouldn't be too far off. Equals 11 over X. Now since this 11 is on top, I am going to put that in first to divide. So I'm going to do 11 divided by 1.5880. And I get that X is 6.9. So side AC is 6.9. So if you did Pythagorean theorem, you might have something close to this. It might be 6.8, it might be 7. But as long as we're in the same ballpark, you're good. Okay? So now look back at your table of contents and see which problems you're supposed to practice on this page.